Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are out at my 50-yard range again, working on another load for the Howa Mini 6.5 Grendel. At the start of this video, I will say that I am not an expert in any of this. You should not, in any case, take any of this as instructional. I am simply a hobbyist documenting my own experiences, and you should take this as entertainment only. Especially because pretty much everything we're going to be shooting today is load data that is not in any published guide. We're working on a hunting load for the Howa Mini. If all this fails, I can throw in the hunting load I already have for my AR into this, and I know it will work just fine on deer. But I've got some 120 grain Barnes TSX bullets, and I've been wanting to try these out in the Grendel to see how we can do. In hindsight, I kind of wish I'd bought 100 grain bullets. I've learned a little bit more about copper projectiles since I bought these, and I should probably be looking in a lower weight range. But this is what I got, so this is what we use. Next year, I might try the 100 grainers out, but I'm really interested to see how these do. Because they are 120 grain bullets, and we may have a little bit of trouble getting them to open up at the low velocities the Grendel produces, I'm going to be using Lever Evolution powder, which is known to get some pretty high velocities in the Grendel. And I'm shooting for the highest velocity with decent accuracy that we can get out of this rifle without being dangerous. Now, this is a 20-inch barrel and a bolt action rifle. None of these loads should be used in any circumstances in an AR, and I will mark them specifically for use in this rifle and make sure that they don't go in my AR, because I have a feeling they could cause some problems there. That's one of the problems we still have in the market for 6.5 Grendel. We don't have separate data for bolt actions and for ARs. Hornady was really good about that when they introduced the 6 ARC. They published data for both, and I think that's super smart. In a bolt gun, obviously we've got different limitations. We don't have to worry about gas, we don't have to worry about lugs shearing off, that sort of thing. Nothing in the action is moving when we fire, so we can go up to somewhat normal rifle pressures and still be perfectly safe. But again, I may blow my face off here. Don't use any of this data for yourself, even in an identical gun, without working it up for yourself first. With that said, I'm basing this loosely on the load data from Barnes for this bullet in this cartridge. They list the same load data for the 115 grain TAC TX as they do for all the 120 grain bullets, just with different overall lengths. I have seated these to 2.23, which is a little bit longer than what they say at 2.2, just so that we can get some more powder into the case. Remember, this data is meant to also be used in ARs. So I'm also using a powder that's not listed, Lever Evolution. There's not a lot of published data, or actually any that I've been able to find, with Lever Evolution in 6.5 Grendel. However, there is data for CFE 223, and they are very similar powders. However, I've found a lot better accuracy results with Lever Evolution, and it's supposed to be a little more consistent in velocity too. If you'll remember the last video with the Howa Mini, we used Lever Evolution to get some really good results. The listed max for CFE 223 from Barnes is 31 grains, and they say that's going to be compressed. With Lever Evolution, I'm starting out right now with a low charge of 30.5 grains and going up to a high of 31.7. I'm going to shoot one shot right now at each of those charge weights and just make sure we're not getting anything crazy on the brass before we go any further. If you have watched the other videos I have on the Howa Mini, you'll notice that I'm lacking a magazine. I've finally been able to pick up the Jefferson Outdoors hinged base plate bottom metal, and so far, just in function testing, I'm liking it quite a bit. I haven't actually got a chance to shoot with it yet, so this will be the first opportunity. I'm going to be single feeding it right now until we shoot groups, so we'll really be able to see what it can do after a while. The one thing I noticed, which I knew was going to be an issue, is it does make it a little bit harder to load, because you've got to stick cartridges in this little tiny gap between the scope rail and the magazine and push them in, it's not really that big of a deal. We're not speed loading this thing. This is a hunting rifle. However, I may cut out the section of scope rail between it and make it a 2-piece instead of a 1-piece before everything's said and done. With that out of the way, I will put not the target camera, but the chronograph camera up in the corner here so that you guys can watch to see what velocities we're getting on these first 5 shots. I'll show you the target afterwards, but remember, each one of these shots is at a different powder charge. So not really too worried about the target right now. What I do want to see is what kind of velocity we can get with this bullet. I would like to see 2,600 feet per second. Barnes is quoting 2,660 with a 24-inch barrel with 31 grains of CFE 223. So it's possible that we'll get there, but we'll see. That would be screaming fast for 6.5 Grendel in a 20-inch barrel. And if we can get there, I'm going to be thrilled, and I'm going to hunt with this with no reservations. But we will see what happens here. Before I shoot this, I'll just go over the attached items real quick because I know somebody's going to ask. I've got a Vortex Diamondback HP 4-16 by 42 scope on the top. I really like this particular scope for hunting purposes. It is inexpensive, fairly lightweight, and is decent glass for the money. And I haven't had any of these lose zero, even on some high stepping 30-06 loads in a light rifle. As I said, the Jefferson Outdoors bottom metal, and I've got a rugged razor suppressor on the end there. Let's see what we get. We're going to start out at 30.5 grains. If I didn't mention, the brass is new Starline brass and the primers are CCI 450s. Let's aim for the top left target there. I'm going to hold dead center. If I recall, I don't remember if I zeroed this or not. Oh, and the action screws have changed their torque surface, so that we may have to completely re-zero, but that'd be fine. Hey, that's dang close enough. Super light recoil, 2470, I think is what I'm seeing on the chronograph there. Might be 2478. Brass looks perfect. Maybe a little bit smoky around the neck, which usually indicates low pressure to me. 30.8. $24.60. All right, 31.1. We're now a tenth above Barnes listed max with CFE 223. $24.92, almost to 25. Brass is still perfect. 31.4. $24.87. Just not getting the increase in velocity I expect. Still nothing on the brass. Primer's very round still. 31.7 grains. $25.44. Well, good news is it looks like this is going to try to group for us. I did something weird on the second shot. I wasn't really paying attention that much, but 4 of those shots are in like a ½ inch there at 50 yards. So, and remember, all different charge weights. So that's a good sign. My next step. So we've already got a compressed load. Let me check that brass, but all right, on that piece, there is the tiniest bit of primer cratering. I doubt I can even get the camera to show it. Don't know if you can even see that there. That was on the highest charge. And right on this edge of the primer indent, right there is a tiny bit of cratering. I can't even feel it with my fingernail. Yeah, maybe just a tiny bit if I really try. Anyway, I'm not too worried about that. I'm gonna run in the house real quick and put 32 grains in this case and see what happens. All right, here's a cartridge with 32 grains of Lever Evolution. I could potentially get a little bit more powder into the case, but not much. $25.64 on that one. And again, nothing to speak of on the brass. The primer looks exactly the same as the last shot. And the shot was right there in the group. What I'm gonna do is load 5 shots at 32 grains, and we'll see what they do down there on paper. Stand by. 5 rounds loaded up with the 32 grain charge. We're gonna feed these from the magazine. This magazine, this internal magazine now holds 4 rounds. I'm gonna see if I can get a 5th in the chamber and right over the top of it. That would tell me if we could be walking around with 5 rounds. Not that, yeah, I can absolutely do that. Let's get everything squared away. I'm gonna shoot the best I can and put up a group here at 50 yards. Actually, the target here at my range is about 55. We're going for the center target there. I'm gonna use a dead on hold so that we can use this as our hunting zero as well. I may, by the look of that last, I may end up coming up a click or two. Honestly, it doesn't matter. I'm holding the gun very loosely. It is extremely light recoiling, but you might see it jumping around just a little bit more. It's because of my super loose hold. That shot was also 25.64. Just like the last shot with this charge. Man, that ejector is strong. Good feeding. There is a little more tension on this internal magazine than there was on the 5 round one that stuck out that much. $25.30. $25.39. $25.44. And most of that group went to the other side of the bullseye there and is in like a 0.4 with that first shot being just a little bit outside. That last shot was 25.69, so we've got an extreme spread of like 35 feet per second, which is not bad at all, especially for a spherical powder like this. All right, I'm super happy with that. I'm not gonna touch the scope, it's just fine. I've got as much powder in the case as I think I can get. Yeah, I could cram in more, but it's probably not worth it at this point. We're hitting like 25-50, so we're 50-ish feet per second slower than I want to be. But in the 50 to 100 yards I'll be shooting, we're not going to lose a whole lot of that. The SD on that was 16 feet per second. So for a shortish range hunting load, which this is going to be, remember, we don't want to bleed a whole lot of velocity off of this before it impacts. For a shortish range hunting load, that's a fine SD. We're not worried about that at all. The group down there looks great. I wish that one shot were inside it. Even so, widest point, that's an inch group, which is perfectly serviceable for a hunting rifle. This thing is super pleasant to shoot. Very light recoiling, fairly quiet with the suppressor on. I did take one shot the other day without earplugs in, and my ears weren't ringing at all afterwards. It was, I wouldn't want to shoot all day like that, but for hunting, it's gonna be just fine. I've got 9 pieces of brass here. I'm gonna load those up with that 32 grain charge, and that's what I'm gonna hunt with out of the Grendel this year. I do have several guns that I wanna take deer with, including the Marlin 30-30. This will probably go out with me for 1 deer, and that'll be about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this short little load workup. Through my shooting with the Howa Mini, I have gained extreme confidence in this rifle. I'm pretty confident that any charge weight I put in this rifle would have shot decently well. For hunting, if this were a target rifle or I were trying to shoot long range with it or take long range hunting shots, I'd try to dial in a load even tighter than this and possibly use a cup and core bullet, which I may do at some point just for the heck of it. But for now, I'm really pleased with this, and I'm excited to take it out hunting in about a week here when rifle season opens. So thank you guys so much for watching. Y'all have a good one.